Welcome to Change the Conversation with the Hopefulist. My name is Wendy McClure, and it's time we had a conversation about living in a patriarchy and how that affects our lives. Together, we can make a difference and change the conversation. So welcome to a very special edition of Change the Conversation with the Hopeless. I have a very dear friend with me today, Matt Halloran. Thank you, Matt, for joining us today. He is a champion of women.
I'm doing whatever I can to continue to learn and try to just be a better human being for the planet. And that just happens to have me focus on the 51% of you. So,
Well, we appreciate that because there's not a lot. So thank you for being here. We really appreciate you taking the time. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about why do you think that so many men are not supporting women's rights?
I think they're concerned about revenge, right? I don't think that they're concerned that women are going to treat them as poorly as men have treated women for centuries, right? I think that there's this really big fear that reciprocation is going to happen. And in my position, not just being, an ally for women specifically, but for LGBTQ plus and all of that sort of stuff, equality doesn't equal revenge, right? And so I think that's a really important thing that people have to pay attention to. But I think that's one of the main reasons why. And the other thing is control, right? So Wendy, people seem to think that they can control so much more than they actually can control in life. And they feel that if they don't have control over things, then they're not going to be able to live the life that they want. I personally don't agree with that. I think that the only thing that we can really control is ourselves, and we need to stop freaking trying to control everybody else.
So where do you think this idea of the revenge came from? Because, it's ironic. I just spoke about this today in an earlier podcast and made a video about it as well. Women have no desire to get revenge. Like, it's not even a thought in our head. All we want is an equal and level playing field. So where is this idea that we are going to treat them as badly as they treated us? I mean, I guess they just assume that because they've treated us so bad for so long.
Yes, I think so. I mean, I really do. I think that that's the main reason is I think what's happening with the level of enlightenment opportunity that's out there for men is I think they're starting to realize, and I know I have, Wendy. I mean, man, I can't tell you probably in the last 10 years just how hard I've had to look at everything I do. And there are a lot of men who don't want to do that. They're happy with being fat, dumb, and lazy and, basically having their significant other be their mom, right? I don't think that that's the right thing. But I really do think since we're starting to become more aware of the horrible things that men have done to women. I have to say, I wanted to start off the show with this very specific thing. It's applicable here, right? So hundreds and hundreds of women were interviewed that said, if you didn't have to worry about men for 24 hours, what would you do? And Wendy, it made me cry.
I know what you're going to say. I've seen it.
Like, I would go for a walk at night.
Yep.
Oh my God.
Yep.
Right. So as men, right, we think to ourselves, well, of course you can go for a walk at night. No, you can't.
Nope.
Because of men. So I really do think that that's really important to I think that's where that revengey thing comes in, right? So they look at all the terrible things that they've done to women and are afraid that those terrible things are going to be done to them. So they don't want to have that level of equality that you not only deserve but are looking for.
Well, and it's interesting because I saw another man talking about this, and he had said, I was at a party with a bunch of friends of mine, and it was probably around 1:30 in the morning, and one of my friends that is a woman came up to me and said, "Would you mind walking me to the car?" And he said he didn't get it. He's like, "What do you mean?" It's like, just walk to your car. She's like, "No, I can't." And he's like, "Why?" Nope. And she's like, "Because I might get, abducted or assaulted." Or he's like, "It never even occurred to me that that's what women are afraid of." And that is, I literally still to this day, if I'm in a parking lot at night, I hold my key in my finger.
Oh, yeah.
To make sure I have some sort of weapon. as I walk to my car in a, well lit, popular uh,
Yeah.
parking lot. And that's the fear that we have on a daily basis. So, are men, is it just something that men don't realize, or is it something that they just didn't care about?
Yes, both. I think that there are a lot of men who are just in I'm going to use this negatively, but blissfully unaware, right? They don't want to know, they don't want to change. Change is difficult. They want everything to stay the same, right? But I also think that I don't think I honestly I think it really breaks down to the simple fact that people fear change,
Mhm.
right? And they also are wildly concerned that if women have power, they can't, because of men stay in men's minds, right? So let's just use that example that you just had, right? The guy who had no idea that the woman would have any sort of fear walking to her car at night, right? um Men don't want to be afraid to walk it to their car at night because they think that women will do the same sort of stuff that men have done to women. I think it's just ignorance, to be honest. I think it's just resistance. I think there's also a lot of um, dogmatic reasons why men want to maintain this control, because it's been so heavily supported in every major world religion, as just, something to maintain control. So I don't know if I answered that, but yeah.
Well, and when we talk about enlightenment, men have it pretty good. So,
Yeah.
that's probably a lot of the reason why they resist any type of change, because things are work out for them for the most part. But when it comes to enlightenment, is there any benefit that you see for men to go through a new journey for themselves?
I think we should just try to be better people, Wendy. I just don't understand the resistance to that. I that's so Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, all of the great early philosophers said that the only thing that is important is work on yourself, right? Because the better you make yourself, the better society and everything is going to be. But very few people are really willing to put in that work. um yeah, I don't think people want to put in the work.
So, do you think that there's anything that you can do as a man, like, when you're around other men, to, change their minds, to get them to jump on board?
Well, so I am not very popular with some of this stuff, right? I mean, I think that there are subtle things that we can do, and then I think there's overt things that we can do. The subtle things that I do now to just try to, again, try to level whatever playing field that I have any sort of influence over, is I only use female pronouns in all of my examples,
Okay.
all of them. So when I'm telling a story about, I work in financial services, right? And I'm telling a story about an advisor, it's always a woman. All of the clients are always women, right? Because again, if you just change the vernacular surrounding it, even if it's just a pronoun change, and I'll even use they, them, to try to be even more inclusive. But I specifically do that and I believe that that's empowering. In fact, I've had many guests, Wendy, who say, I noticed you did that. I said, I do that on purpose. And then there's the overt things, right? I confront people in public, right? I never used to do that because I didn't want to be that guy. I was, kind of raised Midwestern, right? And so, we are generally not as confrontational as, like, people in New York or LA or
What are you trying to say,
wherever, New
dude?
York or
You
LA.
want to
Yeah.
start with me? Come at me,
Yeah, I
bro.
could. So, I lived in New Jersey on the shore for quite a while. So sometimes I embody that, Jerseyness. And I will say, you know, one of the other things that I do too is a lot of times it's such common language, Wendy, that men don't realize how either misogynistic it is or the origins of their analogies. And one of my favorite ones that I use on a regular basis is when people say rule of thumb.
Okay. I guess I don't know about that either.
So the rule of thumb is, if you Google it, it is that you are allowed to beat your wife with a switch as long as it's smaller than your thumb. That's the origin of that statement.
Oh My
So
gosh.
right. So those are the sorts. I mean, again, those are little things. And when somebody says that, I say, hey, you know what? Do you know where that analogy came from, or where that saying comes from? Well, no, it's just no. Okay, let me tell you where it came from. And they're like, oh my God, I never want to say that again. Even if you as a woman didn't know that, that's the foundation. That's the level of misogyny that is built into our language that I believe, as a person who loves language, that we need to combat.
Well, and that's been my issue for many years now is language matters. And that's part of what I try to do here and change the conversation because I want to change the conversation. I want to start talking about things as they are instead of what we were taught to believe. And what we were taught to believe was everything to make, men's lives
Yep.
easier, to have men always have the benefit of the doubt. And that, basically women have been taken advantage of for centuries to uplift their men, and
Yeah.
it's still not seen that way. It's still not seen that women's work in the home is valued. It's still like whatever. You're stay-at-home mom, that's your job. Oh, I'm not getting paid. I wanted to ask you about the confrontations you mentioned. Like,
Yeah.
how does that
Sure.
go?
Sure.
How does that
Not
go if you
well.
see somebody doing something that you disagree with? Like, how does that go?
It doesn't go well.
Okay.
So luckily, said I know this is audio only, but I look like a Muppet mixed with Santa Claus. So people don't really take me that seriously anyway, which kind of used to my advantage, right? So when I do get serious, people they listen because they don't think that somebody who looks like the Muppet version of Santa Claus is going to be serious. Um, I have people who say things like, well, you're a beta, right? Which I think, again, is
Ah.
just stupid language. And I'll come back and say, well, hey, let's just kind of do the numbers here. Married 25 years, 2 children, entrepreneur, veteran.
Yep.
Bring it on. How much more? I drive a truck, right? I fish. I'm a carpenter. I mean, all of the check marks, right, that are supposed to be really manly. I check every one of those boxes, but then I check a whole bunch of other boxes too. Like the fact I'm wildly emotional. I have no problem crying in front of people or actually feeling more emotions than hungry, horny, angry, right? I mean, that's really, really important. You said something I have to go back to. I'm sorry. I hope you don't mind. I'm just going to take control of this
Oh,
for a
you
minute.
please, you do it.
Okay. Right. And the reason why is because I want everybody to know that I'm a podcaster like Wendy, and I'm really much more comfortable driving the conversation than answering the question. So anyway, so anyway, you had said something about it was actually on a TikTok that you had earlier. So
Okay.
you come across my For You page on a regular basis. And so one of them was about what women can wear. So here's a great example of enlightenment, kind of going back to that question. Okay. So 10 years ago, as early as 10 years ago, I took the stance that you talked about in that TikTok. Well, wait a second, which she shouldn't be wearing that, right? She's going to have all of these bad things happen if she's wearing that. And then I remember it was about 10 years ago. So my kids were about 10 years old at the time. And my wife had challenged me on something. My wife is amazing. And she had challenged me on something like that. And I just started really taking a hard look at that and thinking to myself, this is my problem. Like if I am aroused by that, that's a me issue. That's not a you issue. Why am I mean, that's that external locus of control, right? Which again, we don't need to get all psychological on this, but that's really what it is. It's what is within my control. And I think a lot of men want to just blame their boys will be boys BS on just not wanting to take responsibility for what is their responsibility. So sorry, you said that on TikTok. I don't know if that was today or yesterday, but I thought it was relevant to where we were going
Yeah,
there.
and I'm not sure exactly which, because I do a lot of videos on TikTok, but I'm not sure exactly which one. But I did, focus on this not that long ago, and it's not even boys/men's fault because from the time that they're in school, they're being
Mhm.
taught that they don't have to control themselves because
That's
if
right.
they're distracted by a pretty girl, then we are distracting them. They aren't distracted. So I
That is
mean,
correct.
the deep dive is so down under that it's like clawing your way to the top. I'm just trying to bring all of this stuff out into the open so that we can start analyzing this and start realizing that we have been completely, you know, indoctrinated our entire lives.
Yeah.
And we're still, putting men at the center of our lives in today's day and age. And that is one of the things that I thought that people could agree that, you know, the patriarchy is something that we've all grown up with. And but I have men tell me all the time, oh, that theory's been debunked. I mean, like, where are these guys living? I mean,
Well, not in reality in any way, shape, or form, nor had they done any sort of historical or religious research, anything like that at all. It was something else that you said too that I want to highlight is one of the biggest issues that I think men have with equality is they think the world is made up of pie. Right. And so if I give you a slice of pie, then I have less pie. That's not how any of this works. There is more than enough to go around for everybody. If I, which I don't really have the control, but if I immediately snap my fingers and women had equality, that doesn't mean I have less quality of life. That just means we all have a better quality of life. And this gets back to some very, very deep philosophical hierarchical structures of thinking, right? So some of us believe that the world is linear, right, which everybody's on the same playing field, right, and that includes animals, plants, and people, and yes, there's food chains. I get all of that, right, but that's a linear way of thinking where I am no better than you. In fact, I strive to be equal to you, and that's a very, very deep philosophical argument that very few people want because they always want to feel superior to somebody else. And so in our world, in the patriarchy, in the United States, white men are at the apex of this hierarchical structure. And no matter where you fit in this hierarchy, you are always going to be below. That's by the way, that's also wildly dogmatic, right? Because in all religions, there's a hierarchical structure, all religions, except for like one or two. But because we still do have the majority of our population who are adhering to dogmatic religious philosophies, that hierarchical structure, by basis of having a God who is up here and you as a lowly human are down here, you are now in that power struggle. And because you're in that power struggle, you always want to be above somebody else. I think that is one of the biggest faults of society in general. I think it should be linear thinking and not horizontal thinking.
I think that a lot of men do believe it's pie because they will consider the fact that, well, now when I go up for a job, if a woman can be hired for that position and they're going to make the same amount of money, then that's one less that's one less job for me. And I think that's how they're looking at it.
But that's the way it is for men right now. I mean, this is stuff that it's like, I feel like I love what you're saying. And I absolutely, this is the crazy town world that it's so hard to exist in because this is exactly what's happening. I'll give you a personal example. So I'd gotten out of the Navy. I'd come home back to Kalamazoo, Michigan, where I live again. And, I wanted a job, right? A huge
Yeah.
job. And so I had a couple, three different jobs here and there. And then I walked into a sprinkler installation, lawn sprinklers, right? No experience at all. And I walked in and I sat down, and the guy was sitting across from me and he said, tell me a little bit about yourself. It was like an open interview thing. Tell me a little bit about yourself. And I said, well, I was in the Navy. I just got out of the Navy. And he's like, you're hired. And I was like, he's like, that's it. I don't need to know anything else. And I'm thinking to myself, well, first up, you do. And I said to him, I said, look, I have no experience whatsoever. I don't even understand how sprinkler systems work. He's like, no, don't worry about it. But because you were in the service, and I was just thinking to myself, it wasn't just because I was in the service, it's because he was a fellow military blue-eyed white guy who saw another fellow military blue-eyed white guy. I was part of the tribe and he hired me like that. Why doesn't that happen to women? Right? Why don't we swing the pendulum so that is actually your experience as a woman? You walk in and just because you are a woman, you should be able to get hired. above or faster than a man. That seems, it's like crazy town to me, sister.
Well, and some of those things do happen now because women are now mildly in positions of power and positions to do stuff like that. Um, but yeah, we've never really had the opportunity to do stuff like that because the women weren't the ones sitting there hiring people. It was
Right.
always men. And so that's the club that has been so hard to infiltrate. And now that we have, we're starting to not I don't want to say catch up, but we're making progress. We're making
Yeah.
headway. And now in the political climate, it seems we might be going backwards, but that's another topic for another time. But let me ask you this, because when did you start to realize that girls and women were treated differently than the way that men and boys were? Was it something early on, or is it just recent?
So it's been a whole life journey. So my grandmother was a feminist Christian writer. And so she like literally slapped me around a couple of times when I was a little kid. I'd say something stupid. Right. And then the interesting thing is it really kind of the pendulum swung back and forth. When you're in the military, misogynistic stuff, it's unbelievable. It's just so horrendous. uh I don't even know how the women who were on my ship with me existed. I don't. It was constant harassment.
Yeah.
And so um, I noticed it then. So that was when I was like, 18. When I lived, probably 9 was the first time my grandmother slapped me upside the head and said, something. Um, and then, I think that I just kind of existed for a number of years and just tried not to be bad. I was trying not to be bad. I wasn't trying to get better. Um, a lot of it, actually, this is maybe interesting to you, but a lot of it happened when we started this current company. So my business partner Kirk Lowe and I started this company, ProudMouth. We're 80% women, right? By design. I mean,
Yes.
by design.
We talked about that when I interviewed with you. How you
Yes.
yes you're
And because of that, and because of also we work with the Canadians, which are there's some different social structures there, and social mores and folkways with
happiest people
Canadians.
on earth.
I know, but yes, we have, but you have to be constantly again improving communication. And so because of the position that I'm now from an organizational standpoint, I am even more hyper aware of making sure I'm not using misogynistic language, making sure that I'm trying not to talk over, team, or, I'm the co-founder of the company. I want to emulate it from the top, which again, I'm not a huge fan of hierarchical structures, but I mean that's just the reality of how our business has been set up.
Right.
Kirk and I started the company with Lisa, but that was the other thing too. I mean, our first Lisa was actually hired before me. Like I didn't come on. Lisa was already here, and so um, we've had a woman in top leadership since the beginning, and we. So I'm even more aware of it now. Um, and I mean, you said we're not probably going to go in this direction necessarily, but the political climate here in the United States is there's no way that's not true. For some people, there's no way that they realize they aren't seeing what's going on. But for those of us who are aware at all, the fundamental attack on women, and there's been so much research that says that when you give women control over reproductive rights, paying them equally as men and giving them autonomy over things like, I don't know, divorce, right, that actually everybody gets raised out, poverty goes away, like the women are the key to solving an impoverished society. But I don't think men in power want that to happen. um
Well, clearly.
I
I
don't.
mean, that's clear.
Well, it is clear.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're passing legislations that are just, I mean, we were joking at the beginning of COVID that it was like Handmaid's Tale. Oh
Now
my
it
God, it's worse than that now. Like, I
yeah.
mean, I didn't think it was going to get worse, and boy, they just keep making it worse and worse and worse.
And I keep saying, and I've been saying this for about 2-3 years now, if you're not angry, you are not paying attention.
No,
I
no.
mean, it's just so I wanted to ask you about your grandmother. How is it that somebody can be a feminist and a Christian writer at the same time, because
Well, and
that's
that was why she got notoriety, right? So she was challenging some of the uh well, by the way, so she was old, and so some of the translation issues that we've experienced with since whatever it was 1956, those weren't actually written into her Bible, right? So a lot of there has been even more massive homosexuality, discrimination, and women, sort of suppression and repression in newer translations of the Bible than there were when she started, because she was old as dirt when, I mean, she'd probably be like 100 and some odd years old now,
okay.
right? Um, but she challenged that hierarchical patriarchal structure within the church, and most of it had to do with um, submissiveness, right? So the idea that women are supposed to submit to men, and the interesting thing is, depending on if, and she was very, very smart, she actually went back to original translations, Coptic Christian texts. But by the way, if you've followed anything that's Coptic and Christian, women are the head of the church, right? And then the Romans came in anyway. Whatever, we don't need to go all there anyway. So, but that's the sort of stuff. That's why my grandmother was able to do that. That's what she did. She was not subservient to anybody ever in her life, and she was an elder in the church. So it was very interesting.
Yeah, they
It
don't
was a
seem to
Dutch
mix.
Reformed church, so it was a more liberal church,
Okay.
but I mean, not liberal by today's standards. So
Yeah, exactly. So you say that you are in the process of deconstructing what we call toxic
mhm,
masculinity. Um,
mhm.
how would you define that word?
Oh, I think toxic masculinity is every single solitary thing that has been wrong with men since the beginning of time. I think we've just labeled it now as this sort of, so here's my favorite thing. So I'm working with some people right now on this, with men, right? We're having these discussions. And so I had asked one of these guys what their values were, and one of his values was, I need to protect my woman, right? From who? Yeah, the only person you have to protect from other terrible men like you.
There's
That's
no
it. That's it. You're the
saber-toothed
problem.
tiger. Yeah, there's no saber-toothed tigers anymore
No,
that we have to
no,
watch out for. Exactly. And that's what women have been saying for a long time now. You protect us from other men.
that's right.
Yeah.
So I think this alpha is a bunch of shit. I'm sorry. It's the first time I've sworn. I don't know if I'm supposed to do that
That's
on your
okay.
show.
It's allowed.
Okay. So I think that is shit. There's no such thing as alpha, beta, whatever. That's all actually my wife's a biologist. It's not even true. In fact, if you look at the alpha um, examples like male lions don't do crap. Women do everything, right? All of the female lions, they do everything, right? The men literally sit around on their ass all day. And that kind of gets back to what the big issue is men have had it so easy for so long that they don't want to lift a finger. So I think that's part of what it is. I think it has to do with men not being responsible for their own physical urges and thoughts. So that's another massive toxic masculinity issue. So, as an example, a girl walks by and you are attracted to that person. For men, depending on your age, you could have a state of arousal, right? Okay, well, that's your issue. That's not the girl's issue. And she is not there to solve that issue for you. And you shouldn't be mad at that girl or that woman because of she aroused you and now you want to have sex, but you can't have sex, so now you hate all women. See, it's this sort of insane cyclical crap that all starts with that level of responsibility. And I don't think that men have been taught the responsibility that they need to have in society, and especially in relationships. Women aren't here to do anything for men. Women are here as, in my world, better, smarter, faster, stronger, more resilient than most men, right? Here's my favorite thing. Google this. Period pain. So I want
Yeah.
everybody who's listening to this to Google period pain. And when they hook men up to basically they're like tens machines, right? And walk them through up to level 10, right? Of what a woman goes through for 4 to 7 days every month or longer. Because I mean, anyway, it could be much, much longer. It could be half the month. And if you have endometriosis, it's even worse,
Right.
right? But these are the sorts of things, and these men, these manly men are like doubling over at level 3. And the woman's like, yeah, that's nothing.
Right.
She's at a 10 and she's still walking around. And they're like, look, you're that level of pain, you still have to work and drive and feed and think. And the guy's like, how could you do this? So that's the thing, Wendy. Women are better. It's just that simple. You have the power of the world. And men have had to just claw for whatever they can have the power of, instead of realizing that if it's a joint venture, I mean, even if we just started there, right? I saw this great thing. My wife shared this with me, that successful relationships, both people are trying to be 60%. It's not 60-40, it's not 50-50. Both of you should be 60%, because you should always be striving to try to be that much better,
Mm.
right? I think that that's how the world should really look at male-female relationships. They don't. So deconstructing toxic masculinity, I'm going to be working on that for as long as I'm still on this planet, because I think that it's based off of ignorance and lack of any sort of um, control. It's lazy. You're dumb. I mean, let's go. Like, if you think you're an alpha, you're an idiot. You have no biological response. There's no biological support for your stupidness. The people who are talking about toxic masculinity and needing to be an alpha are all men who have serious self control and self worth and self image issues. Um, it's all based off of incorrect information. And so, if you are going to be a real man, in my opinion, you need to start with the premise that women are stronger, faster, smarter, and better than you are, and go from there.
Well, I don't think you're going to get anywhere explaining it that way. I think that no, seriously, like that's just going to make them more angry.
Yeah.
What I think needs to be pointed out is, like you were saying with the period pain stuff, is the world is just not set up for women's benefit. And that's a perfect example of that. Is as you mentioned, we continue to have to go to work and do all these things. We have hormonal issues, hormonal changes that go on every day of the month, and we feel different all the time. And instead of lifting us up and saying bravo for you fitting in and doing everything that you need to do, we get to throw them back in our face. Like, it's just so convoluted. Like, that if you think about what I just said, that is such strength. That is such a way of women being, counted out. Like, the system's not set up for us, but we have thrived anyway. And yet, if we have one bad moment, what is it, that time of the month? It's infuriating.
Well, but then if if you applied the same standards to men, why are you so angry? Is it that time of the month?
Yes.
What? Yeah. So that's another way that I am actively trying to attack this sort of toxic masculinity, is making statements like that. Like, the other thing that I love to do when somebody's acting in that manner, I'll be like, you go, girl. Or, ooh, you're being a girl boss, aren't you? Right?
Oh.
Or, you're being a man boss, aren't you? So I'll even switch it, and I'll say things like that. Oh, you're just a male driver, right? You don't know. And they're like, what? Yeah. Do you see how stupid that sounds, what I just said?
Yeah.
Right? So normalizing that, or challenging that normalized language, I also think is another good way to attack toxic masculinity.
Well, and I'm sure that you've heard the hubbub around the Barbie movie. And that is because they have the roles reversed. In Barbie world, it's all the women that have all of the high positions of power, and, Ken's just Ken. They have, a job, like he's in charge of the beach, and, it's nothing major, but they're there basically as supporting characters, as a friend to the ladies. And, men are losing their minds over it, because it's exactly what you're talking about. It's showing them what it's like for us, and they don't like it.
No, I mean, if anybody was going to make a Barbie movie, it'd be Greta Gerwig, right? I mean,
Yes.
if anybody's really going to, in fact, it's funny. My wife is seeing it right now.
Oh,
So my wife is
good.
actually with a friend of hers seeing it. I'm probably going to be seeing it tonight. But I love when things challenge things that much, and it shows how weak are you as a man to let that bother you? Like,
Right.
really, are you that weak of a human being that a movie is going to infuriate you to the point? I mean, gosh, the Fox News hosts have been going, men and women have been going
Ugh.
crazy over this.
Piers
And I just
Morgan.
think to myself, it's like, oh my God, you guys are the weakest, most ignorant, shallow, scared little people that you can't have. It's a movie. It's first off, it's a movie. Secondly, that's exactly what the movie's about, right? And if you interview, I just saw an interview with Ryan Gosling. He was like, I'm just arm candy. That's that I'm Ken, right?
Yeah.
He's like, nobody played with Ken. Everybody played with Barbie, right? And I just like, man, what a powerful statement.
Yeah.
Nobody played with Ken.
No.
Everybody played with Barbie.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Well, and the thing that, I think a lot of people miss is Barbie's always been about woman empowerment. That's why
yeah,
there's President
totally.
Barbie and
Yeah,
Supreme Court Justice Barbie.
yeah,
Like, they're acting like this is like out of left field or something. But like, no, that's what she's always been.
yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the deconstruction of the toxic masculinity and all of that, where you were talking about, let's talk about companionship. And that's in a partnership, we're seeking companionship, and instead of men looking to make that the important part of the relationship, companionship, they're still grasping onto these old ideals of the woman is the one that needs to be doing this, that, and the other thing. I need to be doing these things, and they don't want to uh, analyze anything. They don't want to just even dive in a little bit to question that, because it's what we've always been told and always been taught. So, what do you think it is that makes somebody refuse to look into it a little bit more?
I think they've surrounded themselves with people who just want the exact same narrative. And it's interesting because there have been many times in our history where, and we just don't learn a lot about this, but there are some great archaeological evidence that shows that there were many cultures that were entirely run by women. And they were very, very successful. We just don't ever hear about it. And so I think I, I'm going to just go back to that resistance to change, right? It's that the good old days sort of philosophy, right? I've never really understood that. Um, I've never really understood that, right? As I don't know when those days were. I'm not a spring chicken myself. I've been around for a while. Uh, Things really haven't gotten that much worse for white men. So what are you grasping for? Right. And again, it's not pie. That's the whole thing. I think if in order to deconstruct toxic masculinity, I think that's really step one. I think step one is on the grand scheme of things, you are not going to have less. In fact, your life is going to be better. And I know that that will fall on deaf ears, much like a lot of the other stuff that I said, Wendy. I know that a lot of stuff that I'm saying isn't going to move the needle, but I'm still going to say it. I'm still going to say it because it's still things that men need to hear. It's still things that they need to be challenged on. Um, and if it's going to make them angrier, then I'm going to start going after the anger. Why are you so angry? And I've actually done that before. I've actually said to toxic masculine men, why is my existence making you, don't you have better self-control than this?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's part of being a man, is being able to control yourself. So you're not acting like a man right now.
Oh, I,
And
I
I mean,
imagine
that's the
that
sort of
does
stuff
not
that
go
drives them.
over well.
Well, no. And so, luckily I've never had somebody who's tried to kill me, or who's, like, I mean, well, there have been people who've tried to fight me, but I don't really participate in that. I don't, I'm ready for that. And
Mm.
that's one of the things I think male allies really need uh, to understand is you have to be willing to step up. And stepping up means that you're going to put yourself in uncomfortable situations in order to try to make a change. And I just don't think there's enough men out there who want to put that time or effort in. And I think that's just pathetic. I think we as men really do need to step up.
Yeah, and I think what you said hit the nail on the head is you have to put yourself in uncomfortable situations, and you have to go against the grain. And, it's not just men that don't like that. Nobody likes that, but that's where growth comes from.
Right.
It's exactly where
There's
growth comes from.
there's a great video. If you type in rabbi lobster, that's all you have to type in. There's this rabbi who's talking about how lobsters grow, and what happens is they grow and grow and grow inside their shell, and then at some point the shell breaks free, right? But it's this substantial period of discomfort before the relief and the change happens. We need to understand that in order to be a better person, it is going to be uncomfortable. You have to be willing to be that lobster and go through that period of discomfort for that period of massive growth. And I don't think enough people want to do that. And unfortunately, through our socioeconomic sort of existence that we have here in North America, people don't. I'm not supposed to tell you anything's hard. Everything's easy. Smile, live, laugh, love. Yay. Just do your affirmations and the world will be. That's not how the world works. It actually is work. And I think that there are people who are starting to try to do the work, but there sure isn't enough of them.
No. And part of that is causing this crisis of men's loneliness. And and this is what I love. This is how patriarchal our world is women lose the right to bodily autonomy, and all I see in the press is the crisis of lonely men. And the reason is because they won't deconstruct. Is because
Well,
they don't want to get better.
they don't want to get better. Just you want a girlfriend? Be better.
Be a good
Oh my
person.
God.
Yeah.
That's how is that just not an epiphany? I just don't understand. So the last girl dumped you because you were a dick. Don't be a dick. Like, come on, what are you doing? Right? You can't have them both, right? Man, Wendy, that's the stuff that just fires me up more than anything. I just drives me crazy. It's that locus of control. That's exactly what that is. I am a man. Nothing is my fault. It's everybody else's problem. It's not mine. That is the crux of the issue, is that men don't realize that they can get better, do better, be nicer, be smarter, be more friendly, be more present. Yeah, I don't know. That
Well,
stuff just drives me crazy.
and as we kind of start to wrap up here a little bit, I think I grew up in a very conservative family with conservative values, and that's why I know exactly what is going through a lot of people's minds when they are, not wanting to go along with any of this, because they kind of look at it like the gun argument. Once you let them take away one thing or put something on control, then they're going to want to do it with everything. And I see what they're saying. Like, now we're even telling men, okay, we're not going to applaud you for cleaning up after yourself. That's basic human decency. But they used to get applauded for it. So now that we've taken that away, so the more that we demand of them, the more self-righteous and angry they are going to get. So how do we tackle that?
We all of us have to put in the time and the effort to make the change, right? And you have to find more and more men and women, but since you're interviewing me, I'm just going to make it about men. You have to find more men who are willing to look in the mirror, see what their issues are, start working through their own issues, start realizing what they have control over and what they don't. And then they need to be able to have good, frank conversations with whomever in their life, mothers, spouses, daughters, whatever it is, in order for you to start making those sorts of changes. And the other thing too that I think is really important is it's not a light switch, right? So we are not going to be able to deconstruct the patriarchy with a light switch.
Right.
It is going to be a slow burn that needs to happen over the next 10 years. But if we continue to apply that pressure and we continue to stand up against this ridiculously antiquated patriarchal based legislation that's going through, even looking at the language, looking at how men and women and boys and girls are marketed to, what we're doing reinforcing in the classrooms. I mean, it's a ground up build, Wendy, and I don't know how many people are willing to put the time in to truly make a long-term change, because they're looking at what's happening today and how my life isn't great now, so why am I going to make it more difficult?
So And I don't really expect him to answer, I guess. But, you would think that men would just want to be a better human and help make the lives of their loved ones better. But leads me to the question, do men really like women?
No, I think many of them don't at all. I think they're wildly resentful of them. Uh, I think they're scared, right? There are so many, and I'm going to make some gross generalizations here, but there are so many aspects of being a woman that I think men would really love to have access to that level of understanding, the range of emotions, communication. And you know what, we didn't even talk about something, we kind of touched on it, and I know we're running out of time, is intimacy. Women understand intimacy. When you were a girl spending the night at a slumber party, you're doing each other's hair and you're, rubbing each other's backs and I mean, that men don't ever do anything like that. So we don't even know what basic level of intimacy women need. That would make such a huge difference if we just realized that that is vitally important. And that could be probably an entirely other
Well,
podcast
because
that you
that's going
could
to
bring
make
in
you
somebody.
beta.
Yeah, right.
Men are not
And you
allowed
know
to
what?
have these kinds of feelings. Only anger. Men are only, and that's what, if men could just consider that for a moment, the only emotion that is socially acceptable for a man to have is anger.
Yep.
You could start to just question everything else from there. But we have to get them ready. We have to get to that point. And I fear that we're a long way off. But this is why I do what I do. This is why I have the conversations that I have, is I hope to bring a lot more awareness to what you were talking about, the ways that we even have in everyday language that go back to just totally patriarchal and misogynistic ways. And sometimes I feel like I'm talking to a brick wall, Matt, but, because it's not only the men that don't want to hear about it, I find a lot of women don't want to hear about it either. And I question that.
I'm very strange when it comes to change because I love it. I crave it. I seek it out. And I know that that's not normal, but somebody's got to take the lead. And I'm not saying I'm leading a charge here. I'm trying, I really am. I have kids, right? I have 20-year-old twin boys. And I look at the world that we're leaving to them. How can that not just make you take pause?
Yeah.
And really want better? Why don't people want better?
Yeah.
I don't get that. Why are they so happy eating the crumbs from the tables of the billionaires? Why don't they realize that there are seats at these tables, and the only way to do that is we have to do some playing field leveling, because the cards are not, most of the people who are listening to your show, cards are not stacked in their favor.
No.
So we need to change that.
Yeah.
And I think we really, really can.
Well, I hope you are right. But thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate you, and thank you for all of your efforts. I mean, if we could get one of you in, every town, I think that would be massive, because I don't think there's a lot of you, Matt.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And I am willing to do the work, and I'm going to continue to try to be better every day.
Well, thank you for championing us. We really do appreciate it. So thank you for listening. We hope that you have a fantastic week. Now go out there and be badass. I'm cheering you on. Thank you for joining me in this conversation. Together, we are better. Please visit my website at hopefulist.com and remember to hit that subscribe or follow button.